Class Prof JC here, and this is our final podcast for this class. I hope that this class has been a lot of value add for you. It's been a lot of fun to kind of go through this class with you. This last podcast that I want to share with you is just going to kind of wrap up everything that we've kind of talked about, but I'm going to keep this simple. There's really two things that I think that I want you to take away from this. Three would be, make sure you get this book, okay? Difficult Conversations. I think I was sharing with you in the last video that I was either reading something or listening to a podcast with a leader that I respect, and they talked about it was a book of recommended leadership books or psychology or something along those lines, and it had this book was one of the top ones that they listed. If you're going to be in a leadership position, you've got to understand psychology, and this book helps. Difficult conversations are going to be a major part of what you do in your leadership journey. So I guess that's one thing. But as we kind of wrap up this class, two things that I just want you to take away this week. Number one, the importance of reframing anytime you're having a difficult conversation, anytime you're having a conversation in general, the importance of reframing, and then the importance of listening. And that's going to be the hardest thing we do, especially for those of you who are leaders out there. Maybe you're good speakers, and oftentimes maybe you're used to having all the answers. And so this idea of listening to somebody else, that's going to be a tough one. But I promise you, you will never get yourself in trouble in leadership if you can listen. And by trouble, what I mean is that you're never going to have someone walk away from the conversation and feel like you didn't listen to what they have to say, as long as you're listening to them. That's really important for them. Okay. So let's just talk about this very quickly. Reframe. I'm on page 202 in the book. Reframing means taking the essence of what the other person says and translating it into concepts that are more helpful, specifically concepts from the 3 conversations framework. We talked about that earlier, so you can go back into one of the podcasts and listen to that. You are walking down a new path and inviting the other person to join you. Okay, so it's translating what the other person is saying and almost putting it through kind of a model in our head and then spitting it back out. Okay, reframing that situation. The most important part of this is understanding that your side of the situation is not the right side of the situation. Your side of the situation is not the only side of the situation. You know, again, we've talked about this already, but there's 3 sides to every conversation. There's your side, there's the other person's side, and then there's actually the truth, which is probably somewhere in the middle. And so constantly just reframing when you're in the middle of a conversation, understanding, hey, this person has their truth, they have something that they're bringing to the table, and I want to make sure that I'm constantly reframing and understanding I could be wrong in this situation. That's a way to reframe it. There's in some of the classes that we do for corporate clients, we'll talk about the 10% rule. And the 10% rule basically says that 10% of the time, at least 10% of the time, I'm wrong. And so my job then is to figure out what that 10% is. And so part of that reframing is, as I'm listening, thinking about what's the 10% that I'm getting wrong. And it's at least 10%. It could be more than that, but if you at least open the door a little bit and say, I could be wrong 10% of the time, that could help. And then listening. And here in the book, it says this, it says it's always the right time to listen. No matter how good you get at reframing, the single most important rule about managing this interaction is this: you can't move the conversation in a more positive direction until the person feels heard and understood. That is key. The other person has to feel heard and understood, and they won't feel heard and understood until you've listened to them. When the other person becomes highly emotional, listen and acknowledge. And look, I've not been good at that. That's something I'm still trying to work on. It's easy when another person gets emotional. It's easy to go right into the emotions. Speaking about corporate clients, one of the things, I was just on the call with a company the other day, and we were talking about this idea of emotion and response. And typically what happens for people, especially very passionate people, strong-headed, strong leaders, is they get into a situation and maybe it's a difficult conversation and their emotions begin to run high. And so what they need to do is slow down and they need to put distance between the emotion and the response. But typically what human beings do is we go straight from emotion into response. And what we need to learn how to do is put a distance between that. Now, one of the things that I teach, again, corporate clients, mental models are really important for this. So we don't have time to talk about that today, but mental models are ways of thinking, okay, and models of thinking. That if we keep mental models in our head, they immediately help us put some distance, put data, put facts between our emotion and the response. But however we do it, that's just really important. So instead of becoming highly emotional with the other person, the best thing that we can do is acknowledge their emotions and then listen to what they have to say. When they say their version of the story is the only version that makes sense, paraphrase what you're hearing and ask them some questions about why they think this. If they level accusations against you before defending yourself, try to understand your view. And that's the key. Before defending ourselves, right? Anytime we're defensive, it comes out of a position of insecurity. Either we have personal insecurities, we're feeling insecure in the moment, and so the thing that we immediately start doing is jump right into defensiveness, and we jump right into, we put our hands up, you're wrong, but that's never a how would I put this? The word that comes to my mind is safe. That's never a safe place to be. It doesn't create a safe environment, right? When you're getting defensive, when I'm getting defensive. So the best thing that we can do is, again, just try to understand the other's perspective, okay? And you can just say that. You can help me understand your perspective, okay? There's obviously something I'm missing. Help me understand. And then just sit back and keep listening. And if you don't get it, just say, hey, can you help me understand a little bit more, right? I think we've talked in this class about the 5 whys, that anytime you're not quite understanding a conversation or a situation, just ask why, right? And they say something, you say why or tell me more, right? And just keep saying that over and over again until you feel like you've got a good perspective on what their perspective is, okay? Whenever you feel overwhelmed or unsure how to proceed, remember that it is always a good time to listen. And then the next header after that says, be persistent about listening. We often assume that the listener is playing a passive role in the conversation, but that's not necessarily true. You can listen to direct the conversation. And I will tell you this, probably one of the most powerful tools that you will get, 2 of the most powerful tools that you will get in your toolbox as you grow as a leader. And when you know how to do this well, okay, when you're doing it well, this is when you're coming close to starting the journey of mastering leadership. It's when you're in conversations and you're able to respond by listening, one, and by asking questions. And then the true masters are able to almost have a conversation with you where they say nothing, but all they do is listen and ask questions. And through that listening and asking questions, you figure out what the answer to the problem is. That's when you know somebody is genius, when they have said nothing, but they've just listened, they've asked questions, and you get to the point. Look, in the other video that I'm recording for my other class this week, the thing that we're going to talk about in that class, also a communications class, we're going to talk about the idea of with them and with it. And with them means what's in it for me, and with it means what's in it for them. And here's how this pertains to you. At every minute of every day, most human beings are thinking from the position of with them, which is what's in it for me, right? Almost everything. And you're the same way. I'm the same way, right? It's human nature. We're constantly in survival mode. And so we're constantly thinking from a position of what's in it for me. As long as people are thinking from a position of what's in it for me, okay, if we're going to really step out into a great leadership role, we've got to be thinking from the position of with it, what's in it for them. So when you come to a difficult conversation, if you can pause yourself, reframe, listen, all the things that we've talked about in the last few weeks, but if you can think from the perspective of with them, or think from the perspective of with it, understanding that they're thinking from the perspective of with them, okay? If you can reframe the conversation about what's best for them, what helps them get out of this, conversation where they feel safe, where they feel secure, where they feel heard, where they feel valued, even maybe even invested in, right? If you go even further than that, right? Just consistently be thinking about that, what's in it for them. Because again, understanding human nature is understanding that people are always thinking of what's in their own best interest. Okay. And you say, well, that's not true. I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about my kids. I'm thinking, well, again, but you think about all of that because that's in your best interest, right? You're probably not sitting at home, those of you who are parents, and you're thinking about my kids. You're not thinking about my kids at all. And honestly, if you were, that might be a little bit weird, but you're not doing, I'm not thinking about your kids, right? If you have kids out there, you're thinking about yours because that works in your own best interest. Okay. I'm thinking about mine because that works in my own best interest. People are always thinking from that perspective, what's in it for me? So you have to be thinking about what's in it for them. So here's the question for you. It's pretty simple. This last one, what does with them mean? Okay, I just explained that to you. What does with it mean? And how can understanding this concept help you be better when you're having future difficult conversations? Class, I have really enjoyed my time with you. I always say this, online education is great. It's fun to do these videos, but it's even more fun to be in person. But again, if we can't be in person and we just meet this way, but you guys have been incredible these past several weeks. And I appreciate the work and dedication you brought to this class. Let's make sure we end strong. This is not the end of the class. We've still got another a week to go. So let's make sure that we end strong, and I know you will. Thanks so much for everything. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions of me, and I'll see you in another class, or I'll see you here, there, or on the other side. You take care.